Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. No, that doesn't mean we're stopping. That means we're just getting started. We don't know where you are, where you're coming from, where you're watching this from. Where I am here, it's still morning in Meridian, Idaho. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach and one of the founders and co-hosts of this show. This is, in case you're wondering, this is Soul Empowerment. Today we're embarking on episode number 32, and we're going to talk about intuition, myth or magic. Now, I know everybody has their own perspective on intuition, and we're going to have a lot of fun talking about it today. And we're going to take as much of a deep dive as we can for the next hour. So please just settle back, join us. And if you have comments or questions that you'd like to post, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to address those. So without any further, I'm not going to say that because that is such a cliche. Without wasting any more time, I'm going to ask my panel members to introduce themselves. And today I'm going around, and the order I see you is Sarah is on first. So hello, Sarah.
Hi, David. Hi, all. I'm in the UK, and that's why it's morning, evening, and afternoon, and all the rest of it, because it's my evening. I'm a complementary health therapist. I have my own program, Gift of Healing TV, and I also have created vocal Reiki. I love working with sound energy and working with people with the inner child and pain and trauma and helping them to heal that. And having conversations like this, intuition is absolutely amazing, because I very definitely have to work with intuition, gut, just trusting when I'm working with the sound energy. So this is this great program for me, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody's got to say.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and welcome as always. And next on the list that I see is Nancy. Nancy, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. I am Nancy Stevens, one of the co-hosts of this amazing show. I work in the field of health and well-being. I do a lot of presentations. I work as a health and well-being coach. I've had the honor of being an author of the Wellness Universe, Guides to Complete Self-Care. And I also host a show myself, Vibrant Wellbeing, which is on the second and fourth Sundays of each month here on the Wellness Universe Lounge. So I work in the area, I guess, of using intuition as well in helping others be supported, whether I'm writing, presenting, or working one-to-one as a coach. So I love the intuition is such a big area that it's just beautiful for us to tap into and really utilize this energy in all of our lives. So I'm looking forward as well to be here today.
Awesome, and thank you, Nancy, for being here again. And of course, last but by no means least, I invite Christy to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Did intuition lead you here? I am a energy healer and spiritual coach of sorts. And am I echoing to people or just to me?
A little bit, but just go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll sort that out later.
Okay, so I actually opened more so to my intuition about 15 years ago, and it really opened up a big aspect of me, which is this ability to help people release what no longer serves them. So I'm so happy to kind of talk about this, because I think that it's really part of our soul expansion, our soul empowerment, to really tap into our intuition.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, intuition is a big topic, and I'm sure we could write volumes about the topic, and perhaps that's already been done. I know that in my experience, the notion of intuition is something that was downplayed a lot in my childhood. It's not that I wasn't encouraged to trust my gut, but I was more strongly encouraged to trust my brain and my logical thinking mind and all the science and everything else. And I think the message, the unspoken message there was that your brain, science, logic, reason are more potent and more valuable than anything else that you might think. And obviously, we all believe that that is not true, and we may come to have that belief that it's not true for different reasons. And I know for myself, as I continued growing up and discovered and followed the recommendations of society, I found that I was getting less and less happy, less and less fulfilled, completely opposite of what I had expected from what I had been taught. And so I had to do some, I guess the word I would use now is I had to do some debugging. I had to take that program and unravel it and figure out why it wasn't working. And, I guess I did that without really knowing what the hell I was doing. So in fact, that process of debugging was an intuitive process for me, and I didn't even know it at the time. So I guess, where do we want to start here? Do we want to start with the kinds of things that people resist, or the kinds of things that are resistances to intuition? Start there and maybe help people figure out ways of overcoming those resistance. Maybe that's the best way to go. I'm opening the floor here.
Well, I'll just speak up just for a moment, because I think, like you, that's how I learned how to begin to tap into intuition, which was moving from, what is, are you following a structure, procedure, protocol, or a set of rules, reason and logic, even though at times maybe you might have had that sense, that sixth sense or whatever, that something else was needing to be, but you were again educated or shown, bypass that, you go with black and white, or you don't do that. And so I spent probably me resisting intuition and thinking that the other way was the more logical, safe, secure way to be. And it wasn't until I did the major unpacking, or moving down into the soil of my essence, that you really began to notice how potent is this unseen but strong source of intuition. And it wasn't until recently that I now utilize as best I can intuition in most all of everything, because that always for me provides the way forward. So there, that's my comment.
And I love the way you put it, David. It's about that sort of suddenly realizing that the life we're living, from what we've been taught and told, isn't actually fulfilling us. And unpacking, unlearning, whatever terminology you wish to use, it is about what serves me, what doesn't. You can use that well-worn phrase, letting stuff go. And it is about that. It is about what serves me, what doesn't, what am I going to keep? Sort of, we talk about everything falling apart when our lives fall apart. And I think it was Neil Dollar Walsh that said, perhaps when everything is falling apart, it is actually falling together. Then another quote is along the lines of, when everything appears to fall apart, just pick up the pieces that work for you, feel are going to work for you, and leave the rest behind. And it's perfect. And that is just trusting yourself, whether you want to call that intuition, gut instinct, inspiration, sixth sense. It doesn't matter what, some people say, it felt right, it's a thought. So it was a feeling rather than anything else. And I think that's what it's important, isn't it? It's that trusting of self.
Well, I want to just put a little pin in your phrase. How does this serve me? I think you said. That's a very important phrase, and I want to come back to it. But before I do, I want to give Christy a chance to pipe in here.
Thank you. So is audio fine now?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. So from my experience, I believe I've always been highly intuitive, and I was in a household of people who were not in touch with their intuition. So maybe like others on the panel and on the call, I was told that things that I was sensing were not real.
Mhm.
And so I think the one real way that I was able to hold on to my intuition was through art. Ideas that came to me, I'm sure, are a sense of intuition or spiritual guidance or whatever you want to call it. So throughout my life, I never lost totally my intuition. I just didn't label it that, maybe. And in the last, in my adulthood, I've been able to realize that that's part of that, as Sarah said, sixth sense. Or I love that phrase you said, Nancy, the soil of my existence. This is a big part of who I am and who I'm here to be. And part of my intuition is like a connection to the earth. And of course, people who are not tuned into their intuition think that that's just, malarkey or whatever. But for me, it's very real. When there's storms, I sense things. When I'm in nature, I sense things. When I'm with animals, I sense things. So it's just maybe, getting to that point of realizing that not everybody perceives things the way I do, but that doesn't mean they're wrong or not real.
That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you for that, Christy. And I wanted to just kind of add on to what you were saying about the creative force that seems to come through intuition or divine guidance or something. I can definitely relate to that. My preferred form of creativity is music, and a second form is poetry. But in the music case, what's really interesting to me is if I pick up a guitar, it's like I'm suddenly plugged in. It's like I'm suddenly plugged in and stuff comes out of me and it just starts, it's flowing. Similarly, when I play a keyboard, it's like, wow, this is really cool. I like this. What's this sound I'm making? And what's this series of notes or whatever? To me, it's magic. It's magic. Hence part of the title of our episode tonight, Myth or Magic. But so I wanted to just comment on that and support that notion. So Sarah, coming back to your comment about what serves me or how does it serve me, I'd like to just share that is one of the most powerful questions that I'm aware of. And I use it all the time with my clients and in any kind of coaching I do. How does that serve you? You're making a choice about doing something. How does it serve you? And someone will say, well, it doesn't serve me. I said, well, it does, because in some way you chose it. So I want you to just, tune into yourself. Forget about what your brain is telling you. Tune into yourself and ask yourself how it's serving you. And when you start to do that, and when you allow yourself the permission to go within and to seek the answers, it's amazing what can come up. Even something in your life that's really unpleasant, you can ask yourself, how does it serve me to invite this kind of energy into my life? And the answer that comes might be something real simple like, well, it helps you to remember the truth of who you are and to stand up and find a way around it, or to learn more about yourself. There might be other more complicated answers too, but ultimately, if you give yourself permission, just asking the question, how does this serve me, can open you up to all kinds of amazing awarenesses that you might not have otherwise had. So thanks for bringing that up.
I think a good point along those lines too is that sometimes negative things do serve us. So if you see something negative, don't just assume it doesn't serve you, because a lot of times the challenge is what provides the most opportunity for growth and soul expansion.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And
Sorry, carry on.
Oh, well, I'm just going to add in. So what we bringing up, myth, magic, or, magic or whatnot, asking that question, how does this serve me, is moving us, if we're wanting to expand and understand intuition. That actually is a form of intuition, because you're releasing, like you said, if you're releasing from your head and moving into your heart, the energy of intuition is going to provide an answer that you didn't know before or nobody else could ever share. That's, to me, that's the base level definition of is intuition is just a knowing, a sensing, and it either becomes more pronounced and available, or if you're just beginning your journey, it may start with that question. But so most of us don't know, maybe not most of us, some of us don't know to ask that. How does this serve me? So that was my first entrance into really expanding intuition, was what does this mean, or how does this serve me?
Right. Sarah, you were going to say something.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was, no can be an amazing gift. The negative can be an amazing gift to us. Is it negative, or is it just guiding us away from something that we shouldn't be doing? It's just, and again, it's the trusting. Sort of a few weeks ago, something happened. I wasn't able to drive because of injury. And my immediate reaction was, okay, I'm not meant to be on the road. It wasn't a matter of, oh, it would have been lovely to go down and see all my nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, because I haven't seen them for 2-3 years, but I wasn't meant to go. And it was just seeing what felt, it was a very uncomfortable period. Having bruised ribs, etc., is not a lot of fun, but it's being able to open up to, there's a good reason for this. The universe has a reason for this. I've invited it for some reason, and accepting that. And if that's me being woo-woo, or is that just accepting the fact there are things at times we cannot explain, but we just know it's okay.
Right. Yeah. And often when these things happen, I just like to remind you that it may be that you're receiving a message that I'm not meant to do this ever, or it may just be the message, I'm not meant to do this right now. And so we got to be careful. We can't generalize a message to be like universal or something. All right, so this is not meant to be today, right now, in this moment. Perhaps tomorrow, next week, next month, whatever, then it will be the right time for me to do this. So it's important for us to continue to be open, and not simply to shut something down because we receive some kind of a message. And it's the same thing with interactions with people. Sarah, you talked about saying no. Sometimes no can be a great liberator, as you've said many times. And the other thing that people need to understand is, well, I'm saying no to you now, but that's not forever. I might change my mind and say yes later. We all have our own situations. We have our own energies. We have our own things. Okay, no is great. Thank you so much for being honest. And now tomorrow, now I'm thinking about what you said, and I think I'd really like to give that a try. Okay, cool. And if you change your mind 5 seconds later, that's cool too. We have to be honest with ourselves and allow, as you said, I think, Sarah, you said this about trust, opening that door to trust and allowing ourselves to just simply pay attention to the wisdom and the brilliance of our spiritual nature, and know that, all right, so my physical body might absolutely get destroyed in this, but I will never be destroyed. I will always continue to persist and exist in this universe. I'm just my perspective.
Well, a lot is opened up there. I feel okay. So maybe some people view, intuition is, ooh, I can't go there. That's out of my comfort zone. It's, going into something that's not tangible or felt. However, what you just shared was, it can be as abundant as looking at a situation that may, a quote, appear to be black and white. The answer, the response, no, or the weather occurring, or something getting canceled, or or changed. That is a form of us looking at that situation and not judging it as black and white, but saying, what is beyond that? is a bigger potential or possibility that I meant to receive and learn. And that I guess that's been my journey, is maybe back in the day before I knew, and something occurred, weather related or canceled or, whatever, I would be like, oh, okay, not meant to, whatever. I just make this black and white thing. But now when things get canceled, delayed, or changed, I now know that there's so much more going on underneath the surface that's mine to delve into, to accept it, because something else is coming in that, had that not happened, what is that? So that's what I use, real life events that have an unexpected turn or twist, or a regular one, to really tap into what is here for me to grow, to be into, and to be a part of.
I'd like to talk a little bit about how do we know if it's intuition or if it's our mind? If that's okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Dive in, baby.
So for me, I had a real turning point, again, probably like 15 years or so ago, where I learned, for me personally, now for everyone, I think it's probably different, but for me personally, how to know that this was like what I would call higher guidance, or, some people say God, some people say the universe, some people say your higher self, whatever you call that, divine wisdom. I was cutting a lilac bush in my yard with a saw, and in my head I heard, "You're going to cut yourself." And in my head I said back, "No, I'm not." And I went to cut the branch. I heard it again, "You're going to cut yourself. Get gloves." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm careful." And when I went to do the saw, it slipped on the branch and it cut my finger. And it ended up being such a blessing for me, first of all, for finding this way that Spirit is speaking to me, but also because I was able to kind of put that deep cut together and realize a part of my healing abilities in that moment, to really mend that without stitches and in a very short period of time. But for me, when a thing comes into my brain in third person, you should, yeah, and in a positive way, right? But you should do this, you need to look at that, or look at this over here. I know that it's not my mind, it's not my ego, it's a higher sense of what I call intuition or guidance, divine mind speaking to me to pay attention to something that my little eyes aren't seeing.
Interesting. Yeah. I think you mean second person, but that's okay. Minor grammatical detail.
It's not saying I am, right? It's not saying
right. Well,
I am.
Is first person, you is second person, and he, she is third person.
Okay.
But anyway, that's whatever. So Sarah, you seem to be responding to what Christy was saying. Did you have a similar experience, or did you have another way of knowing the difference?
No, I think I've had sort of, I don't hear voices. I just have something just appears in my head occasionally. It was when it came to actually buying this house, it was amazing. I was stood in the bedroom in the little house I was in at the time. I'd resigned from my job to go self-employed. And the words in my head were, "Time to move on." And it was just like, what? And it was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I suppose I didn't doubt this. There was just never any doubt in my mind about this, but it was time to move on. And it was just like, I just looked up and it was just like, I've resigned. What are you talking about? And so it was just like, do you know what? You bring it, I'll do it. but I had no idea what the it was. And it was only within a few days, a couple of weeks at the most, I think, my friend Trevor said to me, Sue and Tony have just got back from Australia. They've bought a place out there and they're putting their house on the market. This one. It never hit the market. He said, there's a room outside you can use as a therapy room. He said, I want to get back up onto the property market. If we do this together, we could hopefully do it. Nearly 17 years later, we're still here. So, but that was that. But it wasn't a voice to me. It was just words in my head. And I've had it on a number of occasions, working with a client. And there was that saying, I am the love of my life. And I just knew that that wasn't only just for my client. It was for me and for everybody else in this world. I suppose it's that being in that place of just trusting. And that's how it works for me.
Yeah.
I just want to add in that I don't necessarily hear a voice either. It's more that I know the words are there. Sure. It's hard to explain that other than saying, you know, I hear it, but I know it.
Yeah. You're getting a message one way or another. And in your mind, I guess you're translating it to a message that's a voice or an image or whatever it is, but it's a message anyway. And that's important. Nancy, how about you?
Well, I was going to say along your lines, what I came to develop once I was like, oh, I put down that sense of help and look what happened. So what I now know is when I have, I guess it's not words, but I have a strong sense of energy. In the past, I would ignore it or not know what it was. But so what I've learned in the past couple of years is when I have a heightened sense of energy that for me, it comes from my heart. So the chakras, which you and I will be talking about, I now know that something is happening. It may be if I start really thinking a lot about a person, or I can't really explain it, but it's intuition. So recently, a good friend passed away, and I don't know why, but we had talked, and I kept sensing her presence. Again, there was nothing tangible. I just kept sensing her presence, thinking about her over and over. And then I came to find out during the long weekend, they had found her passed away. I was like, wow, okay. That's the universe was wanting me to really pay attention and be very open to what I can't see or make sense of, but to know there is something really important. In that case, it was the passing of a friend. So I think that for my journey, and maybe for others, it's to take notice of a felt sense of words, images, feelings, or energy in your body, and versus discounting it or denying it or trying to plug into, the physical world, is to bring that in and be curious. Like, be curious about it with acceptance.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I have I think we all have these similar kinds of experiences, frankly. We just may not all recognize them.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, whenever I get any kind of a message, I notice there's always one of three kinds of energy associated with the message. It's either an energy of love, in which case I know without doubt that it's coming from my higher self, or it's an energy of fear, in which case I'm pretty sure it's coming from my ego mind. But the third possibility is it can be neutral. And when it's neutral, then I have to pay a little deeper attention and say, all right, where is this coming from? And to go back to our original phrase, how would it serve me to pay attention to this? That's kind of how I approach it. But something that's coming from a place of love, the message might be phrased as you should, or I recommend, or, take a look at this, or it might even be a command. I remember I think I've shared with you before about my car accident back in 2011 when I fell asleep on the freeway at 65 miles an hour and ended up flying through the trees. I remember kind of waking up partway through that experience and hearing this voice in my head, absolutely powerful, strong voice, relax. And it was like all over the place. It was completely surrounding me. There was nothing but love in that voice, although it was a very powerful, intense, and very, very fierce message. So I paid attention and I started relaxing. I just put my hands in my lap. I mean, everything slowed right down, so I can still remember all this happening. And I just put my hands in my lap. I closed my eyes. I said, okay, whatever happens, happens. And just by doing that, I put my trust back into God, spirit, universe, omnitude, whatever you want to call it. And I came out of that car crash with, you know, just a little bit of a bruise on my chest from my seatbelt and a small bruise on my hand. I don't know what I hit with that. My hand might have hit the steering wheel or something. That was it. The car was totaled. And I'll tell you, after that fact, when I was getting out of the car and I was looking at what had happened, all of a sudden the emotion just came up out of me and I was just, you know, tears. I was sobbing. I thought, oh my God, how lucky I am to be alive. And I realized that some angel, some spiritual being had protected me because I guess we're not done with you yet. It's not time for you to move on. You still got some stuff that you're supposed to share with people. So let's get on with it. So that was the other part of the message. There was kicking my ass and say, quit falling asleep at the wheel and start doing what you're supposed to be doing. Powerful, powerful message in that whole thing. Anyway. So
what a metaphor.
The message can be concrete like that and easy to understand. And sometimes it can be a lot more subtle. And I mean, we have all kinds of messages coming to us all the time. And if we just take the moment, and Christy, I think you mentioned about meditating. You know, you just take that time and you kind of meditate and you just check in with yourself. Allow yourself to just commune with your soul, with your essence, with the soul, the soil of your essence, or whatever that phrase was that Nancy used. Just commune, get grounded in that soil. And all of a sudden, the messages will start to become clearer and clearer and clearer. That's really what I would recommend.
I think a vital part of that really is being present. You know, if we're in our, you know, backstory, or we're, you know, in future land, we can miss all this yummy stuff that's just right here waiting for us to listen and be still and pay attention.
Yeah, very, very true. Presence is vital. So yeah, you can rehash, relive, and get stuck in the past, and you know, make up all your excuses about your life, all you want. And again, I'll ask the question: how does that serve you? Or you can be worried about what's going to happen tomorrow, or the next day, or the next week, or whatever. You can be focused on all that stuff. And again, I'll ask you: how does that serve you? Or you can be right here, right now, where really none of that crap is happening. And everything is perfect. And the messages of that voice, that wise sage that's inside you, can be heard if you only give yourself the time to do it.
Thinking about intuition, gut instinct, inspiration, what is it? Where does it come from? And for me, our heart is our connection to our soul. And our soul is our guide. And our soul comes from and is permanently in love. Therefore, if, as you were saying, are you in head or actually are you in heart? Does this message feel, is it fear, or has it got a basis in love? And if it has a basis in love, then it is something that, as far as I am concerned, you can absolutely trust. If what I say doesn't resonate with you as to what it is, then maybe one of you have got a different thought on what it is, where it comes from. But for me, that is, and so depending on what I'm feeling, and thinking about thinking and thought, I think they are two different things. For me, very simplistically, thinking is our ability to be able to take things and really think about them. Thought can be that thing that runs away with you, that can be that storytelling, that fear base, that whatever. Which is it? You think about, what are you feeling with that? That's just a thought for you.
I like thinking about thought and thinking.
There we go. That's beautiful, because like you said, we're always, a lot of us in our head a lot, right? We were taught and conditioned, use that reason and logic, justifying, looking for an explanation, away from the bigger picture of life. To me, intuition, if I were just on my journey, to me, if I were explaining what intuition is to someone that was not yet in that, becoming in the flow, but not there, it would be, like you said, thinking, getting out of your mind and processing a deeper part of you that is the truth, whether, it's not based on tangibles. That is a sensing of intuition. Like when I shared, I kept getting, having a lot of thoughts and energy about my friend that, that her life was exiting. I didn't have any I hadn't talked to her. We hadn't nothing. There was no reason for me to, quote, be thinking of her, but there was. And I, it took that for me so I was being asked to basically say, okay, respond to those things that don't have a plausible cause and effect, but there's a lot to be into that. So maybe responding to this felt sense, knowing that even though you can't see or feel, really learning to tap into that other part which is a deeper part of your life. For someone that was like, what's intuition? I don't believe in that. That's woo woo. No, that's actually a really deep part of our journey here on planet Earth. It's more about that than it is following the rules, coding, doing computer coding or whatever work that is. That is the deeper part of us being connected in a really caring relationship. And that is what will move us so much more forward in all of our life and the work that is ours to do.
Yeah, right.
I think that I get intuition through more than just my heart chakra, through many of my chakras, but I also feel like, and this is part of trying to explain being like a earth intuitive kind of person, that I get intuition from the earth energy, from clouds. Sometimes I see messages from clouds. Sometimes animals come in. And I'm going to put a book in chat. It's a book by Ted Andrews. He's no longer with us, but he wrote a beautiful book that shared the energy of specific animals. So if an animal kind of repeatedly appears to you, there's a message to it. So this might be a little bit off intuition. This might be more about messages from spirit, but still, I think it's allowing yourself to see more than what you've been seeing. Right. So I'm going to put that in chat, but I just want to mention that.
Right. And you also talked, perhaps not today, but I remember when we were having our conversation, you talked about receiving messages multiple times. And I think you said it was called the magic of 3 or something like that.
That was actually Sarah, but I do feel like, if we don't get the message the first time and it's important to shift us, it's going to show up. It just might take us a bit to see it. So I turn it over to you, Sarah Hun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I've heard is if something comes at you 3 times, it's, if you like, the universe trying to get your attention. And this did happen to me. I mean, these days it's just like if something comes at me twice, I'm saying, no, I think I better pay attention to this. But this particular occasion was, and I've got oracle cards, and there was an oracle card. There is an oracle card, and it's Oceana. And it had come a couple of times at me, and I hardly touch the oracle cards these days, but it came a couple of times at me. And there was a new restaurant that had opened, and I was out training to do a 10K run. And this van drew up almost at the side of me, and it was called Oceanos. And then a few days after that, Trevor said to me, Sarah, have you got an email on another website of ours from Oceanic? They want to connect with you. And I just said, yes. He said, oh. I didn't try and explain.
Yes.
I just trusted that those previous ones had been because of Oceanic, and because that was going to, whether I'd have said yes without it, I don't know. But it did mean that I touched a few lives, especially one particular one. And that was important. So it was listening. That, you know, it could be that you see a word on a billboard, and you could see a word on the side of a van, things, or you could just hear it suddenly in a song, and it's the one word that comes out at you. What are they trying to say to you? And so intuition isn't just necessarily a feeling. It can be that trusting of the messages that the universe sends out to you. And it can come in many different ways.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. And I can relate on this level. I don't think I was always as open as you folks are. So sometimes I had to have the message delivered to me like 50 times or 60 times before I finally registered, you know? And when I did register, then I would say, oh, I would say to somebody, did you know about this? Did you know how important this is? Yeah, I've only been trying to tell you that for 2 years. We've all experienced that, I'm sure, from time to time. And I know that that's been the case for me. I don't necessarily take 40 or 50 or 60 times anymore. You know, when messages come to me, I tend to hear them much more quickly, and I tend to be much more open to them. But it is a process. And I want people to understand that if you have spent a big portion of your lifetime shutting down your intuition, opening it up again, you know, may take a little work, because you might have actually developed some muscle memory or something that shuts it down, and it happens kind of unconsciously now. So you might have to work at it. And working at it doesn't necessarily mean going out and exercising. I'm just talking about focusing your energy on allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to open up and welcome in the messages that are coming to you all the time from the universe. But not just welcoming them in, giving yourself permission to hear them, understand them, and then do something with the information that you're given. That's kind of the process. And when I say work, I mean it's just practice. Really, that's what it is. Now, for some people, like Christy, who have had a connection to intuition all their lives, that work may seem unnecessary. But for those of us who have spent a long time, you know, focusing on our brains and on our intellect and on our, you know, logical thinking and science and everything else, we might have to do a little work. So my invitation is welcome the work, and then welcome the intuition, and then take it from there.
I think there's like 2 words that are kind of key, and one is trusting, right? It's not that you got to work at it, you just have to start to trust it maybe. And the
Okay.
other thing, which I think Nancy said, is to be curious. Be curious, like with Sarah, why am I seeing, why did I see the ocean all of a sudden? I don't live near the ocean. I don't know if you do or not, but you know what I mean? Like, why? Why? Be curious, be childlike. The children have such they don't question their intuition or the magic part of the mind. They just dive into it, but we tell them, no, that's not real. So try to embrace your childlike self and be curious, be spontaneous. Don't worry what other people are thinking about you.
Yeah, and so you just mentioned the childlike innocence and openness and stuff. How many people have ever had or know of people who have had invisible friends when they were kids? And I haven't heard of any invisible friend who was bad or dangerous. Now, maybe there were some of those, but I haven't heard of any. Maybe that's just a child's way of connecting to an intuition that seems much more real and concrete to them. I don't know. Well, I'm not sure what happened to Nancy. She seems to have dropped off. Anyway, we'll just continue and hope she comes back.
I think obviously because we all have different experiences. My thinking was always that people pleasing. And so being open to intuition, I just spent my whole time worrying about what other people thought about me. I suppose if you want to say, was there a point when maybe I did let my intuition kick in for a long last? Was that time I was in the kitchen realizing that actually, why am I worrying about what other people think about me? They're not. And that is intuition, but that is understanding. And and that's not a negative. That is really a positive that helps you to start taking control of your own life, to live in your own life, rather than being sort of controlled or manipulated by others.
Yeah.
Because listening to our intuition is about listening to ourselves. And I suppose that's why I think about it being the heart connection to the soul, which of course is the core of who we are.
Right. So Wesley just mentioned that he often receives helpful messages from animals. So we're kind of echoing what you were saying earlier, Christy. And I think that what we're talking about here is each of these different connection points is just a different way for us to connect to the intuition that's actually in here. The message is really coming from inside, but somehow the animal energy, whatever it might be, is raising your awareness of those messages. And Wesley, I'm just kind of curious if you wouldn't mind sharing, what sorts of messages do you receive that you attribute to these animals? I can wait until that comes up. But in the meantime, this whole idea of intuition doesn't always approach us. We don't all connect to intuition in exactly the same way. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, ultimately, I do believe that the messages all come from within. They all come from our spiritual connection to the truth of who we really are. But how the message manifests in our life might be different. It might be, as you said, Sarah, it might be a bus that drives up and you see something. It might be a song that you hear in the radio. It might be an animal that somehow walks by you and looks at you a certain way that triggers a message. Whatever it is, it's something that's happening that cannot be explained in a simple, logical, scientific manner. It's definitely highly spiritual, highly energetic in nature. So anyway, Christy, you were going to say something.
So, no, Wesley just shared, he said, think of the life of St. Francis, who I believe almost like drew animals to him, right? I don't know a lot, but I seem to think that he's the saint that's always pictured with, all kinds of animals around him. So that's beautiful, Wesley. I'm thrilled for you that you're able to have that connection, because it's important for you, but it's also important for the animals to be to know that somebody gets what they're putting down, right? Somebody's getting what you're putting down, right? So
right. I mean, animals are amazing spiritual beings in their own way, and they all have, I think, very, very high level purpose that we don't necessarily understand.
Right.
At least maybe not on a conscious level, but it's something that when we open ourselves to it, we begin to realize there's a lot more here than just what I'm seeing, or let's say not just seeing, but that I'm experiencing with my five senses. There's a lot more here than that. And that's part of our problem too, is because of our ego minds, because of our logical scientific way of looking at things, we often assume that if I can't see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, or smell it, then it doesn't exist. And that's, well, I think patently, obviously wrong. We know that there's plenty of things that exist that we can't see, smell, taste, touch, or feel. So just a reminder.
Hey, if you can have more than five senses, why not?
Well, and I think, well, there are people now who believe that we have like an infinite number of senses. And we only restrict ourselves to the five because we can identify those and everybody can relate to them. But we're only relating on the level of our physical body. We're not relating on the level of our whole spiritual nature. I mean, if you read David R. Hawkins' books about power versus force and all those amazing books that he wrote, he has some really, really interesting perspectives that sometimes I have to scratch my head and I say, well, how did you come to that? Just to give you one example, he doesn't believe there's any such thing as cause and effect. He just says everything is. And we create the story about cause and effect in our minds, simply because we have this way of looking at things in a temporal way where things are in logical sequential order. So this happened and then this happened, and we assume there's a cause and effect relationship between the two, which may or may not be true. But he says, in reality, there is no cause and effect. There just is all of creation. There is all of spirit expressing itself in so many different ways. And one of the ways that it expresses itself is through intuition. So,
Wesley doesn't exist then.
What's that?
Synchronicity doesn't exist then.
Well, what is synchronicity? Synchronicity is really nothing more than me having an awareness of something happening, right? Without my awareness, what is there? Not just my awareness, but your awareness, our awareness. Without awareness, without consciousness, what is there? Really? I mean, as far as we're concerned, you take away consciousness, you basically take away all of existence.
So that's like that, what's that quote? If a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, did it make a sound?
No, I think, there's a lot of different ways of answering that question. And of course, it's just meant to be one of those koan type, puzzles. I think we all know that the answer is yes, of course it does. But that's only because nobody hears the sound doesn't mean the sound doesn't exist, right? In the same way, if we take away consciousness, it doesn't mean stuff doesn't exist. But for all practical purposes, we can assume it doesn't exist because I have no knowledge of it. Nobody has any knowledge of it. So intuition, I'd like to kind of wrap this up now because we're getting close to the end of our time. Christy, why don't you start by helping people to know maybe a 2 or 3 step process they could do to help increase their intuition abilities?
Okay, good. So this is something I did myself. I actually took an intuition course, and the instructor had us take little index cards, whatever you want, cut them in same size pieces, And this is a little bit of a polarity exercise, but on one part write yes, on one part write no, on one part write happy, on one write sad, on one, whatever. Make these polar opposite cards, mix them all together, and start to play with that deck. So take a card, feel it, see what you feel in your body. Is it a good feeling? Where do you feel it? Is it a bad feeling? Where do you feel it? And see how often you get that feeling, right? Is it a positive card or a negative card?
You mean before you read the card?
Keep them down. You can't see them. Right. Yep. And then make a stack of what you think are the positive ones, what you think are the negative ones. And that helped me to tune into where I get positive messages in my body and where I get negative intuition in my body. So there's these tools. Sometimes people use a pendulum to get kind of a yes/no answer. And it's a good tool to just identify in your own self. Pay attention when you're doing the pendulum. Where are you getting that same answer in your body or in your mind or, as a feeling?
Right. Well, that's an awesome little exercise. And anybody can grab a pile of index cards and just write words on one side. And then you've got a yes on one card. On another card, you've got no. And then, another card, you've got happy, sad. Another one, you've got love and fear. Another one, you've got this. And whatever words you choose. And then you just shuffle the deck. And then I guess what you're saying is keep them all face down and move what you think is a positive card into a positive pile and what you think is a negative card into a negative pile. And just keep doing that until they're all divided. And then start noticing how you feel about them. That sounds like a pretty cool exercise.
Yep.
Wesley asks, what type of cards do you use?
So I just was typing an answer for him. So I don't use a deck now. What I was talking about was just making your own cards with note papers or index cards. But in the beginning of my session work, I did use a printed deck of it was called the Goddess deck, and it was more of an oracle card than a tarot card deck. And I would pull a card for past, present, future for that person. And it helped me again to tune into how I was actually going to receive information on that person.
Beautiful.
So use them as tools just until you figure out your own self and then let them go.
And Sarah, what would you like to say? Do you have a 2 or 3 step process for helping people to get more connected to their intuition?
I don't really. I suppose I do actually. I very much use pendulum right here. And I'm not saying I use it on an everyday basis. The other thing is you can douse with your body. You can literally, and you can I tend to hold my heart and stand with my feet slightly apart. And so you can ask the question, and providing it's a yes or no, but you start by saying to your body, what is my yes? And for some people, it may be a sideways move. For me, it's always a forward move. So my suggestion is always be prepared to move your feet because we don't want you falling flat on your face. And the same with the backward move, because it's a no if I move backwards. And to be perfectly honest, if they're not prepared to answer me, it's because I already know the answer and I've got to trust myself. And that does happen occasionally, but it's about trusting yourself. And I think we can all, yes, it's getting into that point and that stage where you are ready to trust. There are many times that I'm thinking, I'm fairly certain I know the answer. However, let's just do a double check on this, shall we? Because, and they're happy to work with me like that. I'm happy to work with me. Whatever terminology you wish to use, whatever you are most comfortable with. I've used the Oracle decks before. I've got quite a few of them. we can make suggestions, but it really is there something else somebody has suggested? Somebody's mentioned something. If that feels right, it's what feels right to you. And is the intuition you're getting, does it feel very negative, almost damaging? It's not intuition. And I have got a friend and she keeps hearing voices. And I said, unless those voices are coming from love, they are not coming from a place of love and they're not worth listening to.
Well, thank you for that. I just wanted to share with you, I just got a text from Nancy. She said, I'm so sorry. We had thunder and lightning and rain. The lights flickered and then my internet went out. So there's probably a message there for her. Who knows? Anyway, what I was going to say is sometimes the message might be a little bit muddled. You may not always get a clear message. And my recommendation in that case is sometimes you just got to make a choice. Make a move. Make a move one way or the other. You'll get a pretty quick response shortly after that about whether that was the right move or not. In which case, then you can make an adjustment. Of course, if we're talking about leaping off a building without a parachute, it might be too late to change that move. But obviously, I'm being a bit facetious here. You obviously don't want to do something that's life-threatening or anything like that in making your choice. But sometimes making an action that fails is the best thing you can do in that moment because it teaches you something or it points you much more quickly to what you really need to be doing. So I think that the big message that I want to leave you with is trust your gut, trust your intuition, trust that divine guidance that is always there speaking to you, and give yourself permission to grow into it in a bigger way. Anybody else have any final words before I close us out?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all for being here and thank you for if you're watching the recording. But just as a reminder, the recordings of this and every other episode of our Soul Empowerment Show can be found on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. So head on over there sometime and leave some comments so we know how you feel about these episodes. Thank you again for joining us. My name is David McLeod. I'm your Life Mastery Coach. And you are?
Christy Borst.
There you go. And you are?
I am Sarah Jane.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.